The following account of a journal of a voyage made in the Hannibal of London in 1694 by Thomas Phillips will be read in two parts. As you listen to the recording, look at the questions, the 4 questions below, for analysis. Phillips begins, "Our factory at Whydah lies about 3 miles from the seaside, where we were carried in hammocks, which the factor, our agent, sent to attend our landing, with several armed blacks that belonged to him for our guard. Our factory stands low near the marshes, which renders it a very unhealthy place to live in. The white men the African company send there seldom returning to tell their tale. 'Tis compassed round with a mud wall, about 6 foot high, and on the south side is the gate. Within is a large yard, a mud-thatched house, where the factor lives with the white men. Also a storehouse, a trunk, a prison-like holding area for slaves, and a place where they bury their dead white men, called, very improperly, the hog yard. There is also a good forge, and some other small houses. As soon as the king understood of our landing, he sent 2 of his capossars or noblemen to compliment us at our factory, where we designed to continue that night and pay our respects to his majesty next day. Whereupon he sent 2 more of his grandees to invite us there that night, saying he waited for us, and that all former captains used to attend him the first night. Whereupon, being unwilling to infringe the custom, or give his majesty any offence, we took our hammocks, and Mr. Pearson, myself, Captain Clay, our surgeons, pursers, and about 12 men, armed for our guard, were carried to the king's town, which contains about 50 houses. We returned him thanks by his interpreter, and assured him how great affection our masters, the Royal African Company of England, bore to him for his civility and fair and just dealings with their captains, and that notwithstanding there were many other places, more plenty of Negro slaves that begged their custom or business patronage, yet they had rejected all the advantageous offers made them out of their goodwill to him, and therefore had sent us to trade with him, to supply his country with necessaries, and that we hoped he would endeavour to continue their favour by his kind usage and fair dealings with us in our trade, that we may have our slaves with all expedition. He answered that we should be fairly dealt with, and not imposed upon, but he did not prove as good as his word. So after having examined us about our cargo, what sort of goods we had, and what quantity of slaves we wanted, etc., we took our leaves and returned to the factory. According to our promise, we attended His Majesty the next morning with samples of our goods and made our agreement about the prices, though not without much difficulty. Next day, we paid our customs to the king and capossars. Then the bell ringer was ordered to go about to give notice to all people to bring their slaves to the trunk to sell us. Captain Clay, the captain of another English ship, and I had agreed to go to the trunk to buy the slaves by turns, each his day, that we might have no distraction or disagreement in our trade. As often happens when there are here more ships than one, and their disagreements create animosities, underminings, and outbidding each other, whereby they enhance the prices to their general loss and detriment, the blacks well knowing how to make the best use of such opportunities, and as we found, make it their business and endeavour to create and foment misunderstandings and jealousies between commanders, it turning to their great account in the disposal of their slaves. When we were at the trunk, the king's slaves, if he had any, were the first offered to sail, and we must not refuse them, though as I observed, they were generally the worst slaves in the trunk, and we paid more for them than any others, which we could not remedy, it being one of His Majesty's prerogatives. Then the Capucers each brought out his slaves according to his degree and quality, the greatest first, and our surgeon examined them well in all kinds to see what they were sound in wind and limb, making them jump, stretch out their arms swiftly, looking in their mouths to judge of their age. For the Capucers are so cunning that they shave them all close before we see them, so that let them be never so old, we can see no grey hairs in their heads or beards. And then, having liqueured them well and sleek with palm oil, 'tis no easy matter to know an old one from a middle-aged one. When we had selected from the rest such as we liked, and we agreed in what goods to pay for them, the prices being already stated before the king, how much of each sort of merchandise we were to give for a man, woman, and child, which gave us much ease and saved abundance of disputes and wranglings. Then we marked the slaves we had bought in the breast or shoulder with a hot iron, having the letter of the ship's name on it, the place being before anointed with a little palm oil, which caused but little pain, the mark being usually well in 4 or 5 days, appearing very plain and white after. When our slaves were come to the seaside, our canoes were ready to carry them off to the longboat if the sea permitted, and she conveyed them aboard ship, where the men were all put in irons, 2 and 2 shackled together, to prevent their mutiny or swimming ashore. The Negroes are so wilful and loath to leave their country that they have often leaped out of the canoes, boat, and ship into the sea, and kept under water till they were drowned, to avoid being taken up and saved by our boats, which pursued them, they having a more dreadful apprehension of Barbados than we can have of hell, though in reality they live much better there than in their own country, but home is home.